In this video, I'm going to discuss my educational philosophy and how my PPTs as a future teacher corresponds with my classroom management portfolio. I believe that as a future teacher, it is my job to make sure that all of my students feel seen, valued, and heard. I want to create an environment where all of my students feel comfortable enough to ask me questions. I want them to be comfortable with one another, and I want to create a safe environment for everyone that walks into my classroom. My goal as a future teacher is to work with kids that are in pre-K or kindergarten, and with that being said, I will need a classroom that has clear expectations that my students can walk in and follow, because when you're working with students that are that young, they need step-by-step guidelines. Some of the PPTs that I have highlighted in my classroom management portfolio that I think that are most important is that it's important to keep in contact with your students' parents so that way they'll know what's going on throughout your classroom. And also it's important to still in your students to have a growth mindset. And it is also important to allow your students to make mistakes and to let them know that no question is a dumb question. It's always important to allow your students to make mistakes, because if they don't make mistakes and you don't give them room to grow from their mistakes, they won't have a growth mindset. It's important to have a growth mindset, especially as a young child, because as they grow older, they can learn from these mistakes. Instilling in your students to have a growth mindset helps them to not give up, and it helps them to learn from their mistakes and to just grow from it. And it is also important for students to know that any question is not a dumb question, because one student might have a question that another student might also have, but they're afraid to ask. And so I think it's important to let students know that there's no question that's a dumb question, because one of your peers might have the same question. And as a future educator, I will make it known to parents that it is very, very important to stay up to date with what is going on in my classroom. I will send daily reminders home through my class dojo, through emails, through phone calls, and just to make sure that what's going on in my classroom is also keeping up to date with what's going on at home. I think that this is very, very important so that me as a teacher and the students' parents can always be on one accord. Some of the classroom rules and the classroom norms that I will have in my classroom as a future educator dealing with younger students is to raise your hand when you're wanting to speak, respect yourself and the materials around you, and also use your time wisely and stay on task. I think that it is very important to instill in your students to use their time wisely and to stay on task, because with doing so, you have more time for students to ask questions. You have time as a teacher to kind of walk around and kind of gauge the classroom, see who is struggling, see who's doing good. You can come back at the classroom and do a reflection at the end. And I just think it benefits everyone in the classroom. Respecting your peers, yourself, and just everyone else's differences that's in the classroom will allow you to have a much more manageable classroom, and it'll also teach students how to respect one another. I believe that respect is learned at a very young age. Little kids like pre-Kers and kindergartners, they watch everything you do. So if you instill in them at a very young age to respect one another and respect each other, that'll take them a long way as they go up in their grade levels. And some daily routines that I will do in my classroom to kind of help my students learn this gradually is using kind words to one another. Like I said, raising your hand and allowing one another to speak. And with doing this, it is important to correct the student when they are wrong and properly redirect them into the right direction. In my classroom, I also think that it is very important to have a list of procedures that we go through every day, just to instill a daily routine for students at a young age. For example, when my students walk into my classroom, I would have them put their stuff in their cubbies, take out their homeworks, Get out your tablets and do like review and ask any questions. Ask students how their weekend was, just to break the ice in the classroom. And I would make this like a daily routine so that students can get comfortable with communicating with one another, and to know that when you come into a setting, a business setting, how to act. And last but not least, as a teacher, I will make sure that I come and I put my best foot forward. I always like to say, when you dress your best, you feel your best, and you also perform your best. So when I walk into my classroom, I'm going to come in professional, so that way my students can know how to dress and how to appropriately act in a business setting.